Thank you for inviting me here. I'm delighted to be here. I'm always honored when I get asked to do a demo. I brought a whole lot of things because when I do pouring, it sometimes is a multi-year project to do one painting. Not because it takes that long, it's just that I'm slow and I put something away and then I'll go back to it later on. And with pouring, you can do layers and layers and layers. So until I get it to the point where I feel like I'm done, it can go on for months and months.
Can you hear that better? If not, I'll bring the PA system up here. Is that all right? Everybody okay?
Okay. Just let us know if something, interferes and you can't hear. So I just want to talk for a minute about how I got into pouring. And it was this book that led me here. And I had this book. I used to buy books constantly, but I wasn't painting yet. And my husband would get so annoyed at me. He'd say, stop buying books and start painting, And this is one that I had for quite a while. And I don't know if any of you have seen this. It's Lan Zhen's book called Chinese Painting Techniques for Exquisite Watercolors. And I just loved the technique that he used. There's very soft and watery, and it just was like, I fell in love with this. And he's very good in this book. I think it's one of his first. He has several now. He goes into really detailed instructions about how to do the paintings that are in here, or some of them anyway. So I really was kind of intimidated, even though he had the instructions, this whole idea of pouring the paint, I just didn't have a sense of how to do that until I took a class with Roberta Rosenthal, who is a botanical artist, and she actually teaches at the Bronx Botanical Garden in the Botanical Illustration program. I never had her, but I had other teachers there. And she lives right nearby me, and so she was teaching a Chinese brushstroke workshop one weekend right down the road from me. And so I took it, and in that class, we learned how to pour ink onto layers of rice paper. And from that moment, it just sort of like clicked how easy this could be. And then I started doing it myself. So that middle picture over there of the grapes and the vines, that was the first one that I did. And that one has just one layer of pour in it, and the rest is direct painting and negative painting. But I was so thrilled with how it came out. It was sort of like, mysterious and flowing, and that it was the first class I ever taught. So that was when I started teaching, because I got so excited.
Is that on rice paper?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, but just the pouring
Okay.
gave me the confidence. I never did any more rice paper work. Oh, you have?
I've tried. Frederick Wong was with the rice paper.
Oh, I'm not familiar with it really, so I don't know.
Art students.
Oh, okay. Okay. One of the things I did with Lan Zhen's work, he has this beautiful painting that, let me just find it. Here it is. And it's these, I don't know what they are.
Birds.
They're Asian birds. I'm sure there's I don't know if you want. Cranes, probably cranes, yeah. But I was just struck on how he could have done this, so I decided to try it out. And this was can you see this down here, or should I hold it up like this?
Yes. Down on the table.
Down on the table? Okay.
Upside down.
Oh, okay. I'll get the hang of it.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So I changed the bird to a heron, which we see by us. So we don't see cranes. So it was thrilling to be able to sort of copy this. And it was a a half sheet size painting. And I really loved how it came out. And I realized that he poured some of it, but he had to do some direct painting too on here in order to get those dark trees and the outlines of them. So I wanted to show you, besides that work, I wanted to show you some of the things that I'm working on, and just before I do any pouring, just talk about the process of what's involved. Always, for me, the first thing I do in 95% of my work is a value study. So, how many people in here do value studies? Some of you, okay. So I'll show you some of my value studies and some of the paintings. And some of these I'm working on. Some of them may be failures, so I'm doing them again. But I wanted to just give you a sense of how, it's sort of abstract, but it just is a map for me as to where my lightest lights, my darkest darks, and the midtones will go. So on this painting, I've done it, I'm working on the second edition of this. This is actually the first edition. And I did this in a demo, and I was experimenting. Usually I only use transparent colors, because when you're layering, in order for the white of the paper to keep showing through and to get that transparent look, you've got to use, unless you water them down a whole lot, you've got to use transparent colors. I did a little experiment here, and I used one of the colors. I usually write them. This is, I used 3 primaries, a yellow, a red, and a blue. This was cobalt turquoise, maybe not quite transparent. Naples yellow, definitely not transparent. And magenta, transparent. And the first, if I have it here, the first layer I did looks so different from what it came out. I mean, this, I love this. It was transparent, it was intense colors. I thought, wow. But as soon as I put another layer on with the yellow and the cobalt turquoise, which aren't really transparent, it became like neutralized, a lot of it. So then I decided, all right, I really love the composition of this and the subject matter. I was going to do it again, and I'm in the midst of doing this one over again. So I changed the colors to Indian Throne, I don't know how you say that, blue. If you don't know what that is, it's a transparent, but it gets very dark, very nice blue. It's great to use for darks. And New Gamboge, yellow, and quinacridone, red. So now these are all of these are transparent colors. So forget it. I have to hold it this way. I like how this is coming out. I'm not done with it. I don't know if you could see. Can you see the shine? Oh yeah. Yes. That's where this is going to be my final layer of paint. I'm putting some darks in different places. There is an ear that's going to appear right here. And I've never done it this way before, but I put the masking fluid around. So I think what I'm going to do, one of my students brought these. She works in a lab, and she gets all these
Cool.
pipettes, I think. And so I think I'm going to drop the paint into these areas that I want to put more dark. Because to pour it, I'd have to mask everything. So since this is probably the last layer, I'm just going to try to do it this way. I don't know if I'll get to this here today, but I might.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, absolutely.
If you mask an area that's already painted and you remove the mask, will that remove part of the paint with it?
Sometimes. It's still a little bit of a mystery to me because I think there are a lot of variables. I think if the first layer of paint that you put on the paper, if their paints are staining, that I don't think they're going to lift up. Now, so I'm just still learning about this. Also, if you put down masking fluid on paper that isn't absolutely dry, I think it's a problem. And sometimes paper can appear dry, but it has pulp on the inside, like the inner layers of the paper. If they're damp, I think it affects how the masking fluid will come off later on. So it may also have to do with what color is under it. Is it a color that kind of lifts easily? you know, if there's several layers and you're putting it over, like here, there are several layers. I'm hoping it doesn't come up, but who knows?
Question.
Yes.
What paper are you using? Because
Oh,
when
yeah.
I board, I have to fasten it down on all corners and tape it down. And you don't seem to have it taped down.
Well, I do two different things. Historically, what I've done is I always use I like this plexiglass. This one has a crack in it. But I take my plexiglass, I put it on here, and then I clip it. And sometimes I only use 2 clips. I just find it more convenient that I can move those clips around. I can get underneath the edge and wipe here because sometimes you can get back runs on the front if you don't keep this edge clean. I never tape it down, but what I do, a friend of mine who's an art student, she saw on YouTube, and I'll show you how it works, a video of pouring, and the artist used tape. Very pretty singing. And rolled it like so, and put it along the edges.
That'll keep the fork from running around.
It keeps the paper off of the backboard,
Yeah.
which is good. The only problem that I've found so far with it is that if I'm not finished and I put it away, like put it in my bags, these tapes get squished down and they get flattened. And then they can be different heights and the paper can be wavy, and then when it's wavy and you try to pour, you get places where the paint will accumulate with the water. But I found this works really well. I mean, I like it. So it goes around the edge, and then I usually put 2 pieces across the middle. So it keeps the middle up and not caving in.
And is that 300-pound paper?
No, it's 140-pound cold press arches. Yeah.
And why do you have to keep it away from the
Mainly because of back runs on the edge. Now, some people do tape it all down, they tape it like this. It depends on your back. If you have a backboard that accepts moisture at all, it takes so long to dry, and then it may not dry correctly, and then you're doing more things without the paper being dry, and it's not the best situation. So some people use a what do you call it when there's a block. However, that block has this little slit in it, you know, you put the knife in, and there have been difficulties with the water going under that slit in there and causing problems in the back of the page. Any other questions, well, before I go on? So the steps. So the first step. Oh, okay. So I was going to show you some of my value sketches and what I'm working on. So this, I'm not finished this, and I haven't given up on this. You know, it's still decent painting, I think. I mean, it's not finished. I need to put more darks in and maybe some details.
Janet, what's masked on there at this point?
On here?
Yeah, what's-
Nothing.
Nothing is masked.
I've taken all of the mask off. The sky was masked. Anything that's white was masked throughout the layers. Then I must have poured a layer and then masked over this to do these other darker pourings. Yeah, so there's nothing. So one of the questions I always get asked is how long you can leave masking fluid on. Everybody has a different thought on this. I went to see, I don't know if anybody here was at the, it'll come to me, Linda Baker demonstration at the American Watercolor Society. You know, when they have the show, they always have a artist night, I forget what they call it, watercolor night, and so they have somebody doing a demonstration. And Linda Baker does a lot of pouring, and she said in her studio, she has all of these paintings in process on her floor, and so she works on the floor mostly. So she has a lot of them going at once. She said leaving masking fluid on has never been a problem for her. she puts them in a drawer in the dark after she's finished. Say that again?
Well, the sun can bake it if you're not careful.
And I will show you an example of baked masking fluid. And I didn't know this, but I have a file cabinet in my room that sits in front of my window. And I pile all my unfinished work there. And this was in the pile, and it must have been on top. This was another version of the first painting over there. And that painting was accepted, my only painting that was ever accepted to the American Watercolor Society show.
We saw it.
Oh, did you? Okay. I was in shock. Anyway, I'll talk about that one later. But now, can you see?
Face it to yourself.
Oh, thank you. Yes. See her hat?
Yes.
And the two things happened with this painting, and I'm glad they happened to the same painting. The first was, this got baked on. There's no way it's coming off. It's on there permanently. I've tried everything. The second thing I did was, I tried to save my pouring, the color. You know, you use a lot of paint when you mix it with the water. And so I had it in these little jars. And I probably went back to it maybe a few weeks later, or maybe even a month or two later, and did another layer of pour. Now, I don't know if you can see it. Okay. Can you see the flakes? We have a well, and we have hard water. There's a lot of minerals in it. And I think over time what happened is the paint somehow mixed, and there was some chemical thing going on there. And it really, if it hadn't already been ruined by this, it would have been ruined by this. So I no longer, well now if I think I want to keep the paint in the water, I use distilled water. But usually I don't keep it anymore. I just toss it away and start a new mix the next time I go back. So this was a good learning experience.
Do you use paint from the tubes or you use the liquid water?
Tube.
The tubes.
Tube, yeah, I've never tried the liquid. I think some people use it, but I've never done it. Have you tried?
Yeah.
How's it work?
Well, as long as the liquid paints are new, they're good, but they also granulate.
Oh,
They
really?
also granulate, and I saw people whose paintings were full of this granulation. Wow. So you have to be careful for them too when they get old.
Oh, interesting. Okay, that's good. That's good to know.
I just want to say, I had problem with the maskings. If it sat for an extended period of time at room temperature, it would not come off. And there's another brand that I bought at Jerry's, it's gray. And I used it in the dye in the masking fluid. If I left it on there too long, the mask would come off, but the dye would stick.
Interesting. Is it this PBO drawing gum?
That one, yes.
Yes. This is a nice one. Some people use, some of them are orange, some of them are blue or gray, some of them are like yellowish.
But that was sticking. It was 300 pound, really good, high quality cotton paper, and the blue stuck on it.
My favorite, actually, one of my students said, she just raved about the new Winsor Newton. I had an old bottle Winsor Newton. It was yellowish. I didn't like how it went on, but I decided to invest. These things are not cheap. In a brand new bottle, and now they have what they call colorless. And I tried this a few weeks ago, and I just don't like it. It doesn't go on thin enough. I find this is the best. This incredible white mask is the best. It's very liquidy. It doesn't glob up like some of the other ones do. The catalog, yeah, I don't know where in the store, but yeah. And you know, I tried all kinds. There's the another one that I like that I had good luck with is this. If you want something that's narrow, this has a nice point on it. It's schminky. Aquarelle, and it says something in German. And it's nice. I mean, I've had it for a number of years, and so it's starting now to get clogged up. And I try to buy a new one of these at least once a year, and I put the date on it, because as they get older, they get more yellow, and they get thicker, and they don't go on as well. So I always have to try to have a fresh one on hand. But just some other information about tools to use to put masking fluid on, all kinds of things. They have the incredible nib, which I think goes along with the incredible white mask. One of my students is a nurse. This works very well. If you need something really narrow, you just load it up. You have to wash it out well after you're finished.
Is that a hypodermic needle?
Yes.
You can get them at the pharmacies.
Pharmacies, yeah.
And those squeegees.
You can buy it.
I just recently bought I was taking a workshop, and somebody in the workshop used these. I don't know if you've ever seen these. This came in a set of 3. These are embossing tools. And they're just these little tools, and they have like, I don't know if you can see it, a ball on the end. And different sizes. And so if you need a thin line, these are nice. However, you don't have to invest in anything like this. You can just use the back of a brush, the end of one of your brushes. And then just one other thing I wanted to show you is, I ruined it because it rusted. I mean, I could probably still clean it up right. This is a ruling pen, a ruler pen, or ruling pen. And yes, it's an adjustable, let me get this in the right place. Here we go. It's an adjustable metal, and you turn this screw and you can make the line thinner or thicker. It's not bad. But again, it's sort of, do you really need it? It's fun to get things. But and I left it in, what happened is I left it in this box. When it was closed, something in here was wet, and it rusted all up. Okay. And you can, sometimes if you have, you can use a toothbrush to put it on too. If you want to have some speckles in whatever, a road or rocks or whatever, just dip it in the masking fluid and sprinkle it on. It's very nice. It makes some nice effect. Okay, so, lily pads. Lily pad value study. First lily pad painting was this. I did not follow my value study because I poured this background water and I fell in love with it. Always a mistake. So I decided, I'll leave the water like it is and I'll make the lily pads darker. Went way too dark. I haven't given up on this. I might pour some of the back water and see what happens.
It's not a phone, I think it's
Second water lily painting.
Oh, that's beautiful.
I like it much better. It's not quite finished. What I need to do, what I want to do still is put a little bit more pastel-y kind of colors in some of these petals and some dark underneath the bottom here. I think it will make the flowers come out a little bit more. But I like it, and I'm going to frame it soon. So that's the lily pad. And the calves. You saw these calves. This cow,
You don't have to do the limbo.
okay. Oh, let me just show you some of these. The nasturtium, oh, wait a minute, I have a nasturtium pumpkin here. Okay, nasturtiums. Photo, and then this is the value study. These fellows were sitting on the steps of a church in Guatemala, and I think I may have prints of them over there. Yes. I have a value study somewhere. Not here. These, this is not the best reproduction of this. This was some rhododendron, and this is the painting, but it's not a good reproduction of it. This painting was just accepted into the Catherine Lorillard Wolfe show in the city, so it's at the National Arts Club. This is a farm, and I don't have this with me, but here is the value study for this. This was a little more detailed value study. Usually I don't do that much detail. This is the grapes, the original photo of the grapes. These are the birches, the fourth painting over there. We have a birch grove in our front yard, so I do a lot of birch paintings. So very simple, just, mid-tone, dark, white, to give me a guide as to where to go. This is the trotter, which is, I guess it's sitting on the table over there, and this is the value study for it. This is the woman in the skirt. Oh, I don't know where this painting is. Maybe I have, this is the value study for this daylily. I don't know if I have the painting of it. This is something I tried. It was a little different. This is a painting called Stonington, Maine. And I tried to use only granulating paints. And it was very interesting. And some of them were those Daniel Smith ones that are made out of minerals. I don't know if you've tried those. It was a very interesting effect. This is also a half a sheet, so it's quite large. I don't have it with me. I don't know if you could see. It's very textured, all of those background trees and all. I like granulation. Some people don't like it. So sometimes I only buy a color if that brand of the color is a granulating one. Okay. Is there anything else? The bird, the hawk. This is the value sketch of the Dos Amigos. The cats. Okay. I don't have this one with me. This was a house on a road near us. Okay, so first step, value study. Drawing the picture onto the paper. I try to do it dark. I try to draw dark because so I use a soft lead like at least a 2B soft, because sometimes when you're doing multiple pours it can wash off what's there in terms of pencil marks. So these days These days, okay, this is what I'm doing today. This is a turtle picture. I tried to do this. I don't know if I have the. I tried to do a value sketch of these turtles, and I just was not liking it. It was just too much going on, and then I decided to get a closer view. So then I enlarged it, and then I did this value sketch. Now, I don't know if you can see it because it's fairly light, but you can see darkest dark back here, heads and feet pretty much, the shadow area in here. And I like this much better than the other ones I was doing. So I decided to do it that way, and this was my first. So I drew it on here, and I've learned that now I take, this is, by the way, tissue paper. It's tracing paper, and it's called Starving Artist. It's by Cheap Joe. It's fabulous tracing paper. I used to get the kind that was really thin and papery. This is so much nicer. So I did my drawing, and then I traced it with pen onto this paper so that if I lost any of the lines in here when I was pouring, I could go back and refresh them by using this guide. And the other advantage, if you then do a pouring and you don't like how it's coming out, you can easily do the drawing over, which I did here. I don't have all of the drawing on here, but I have the bulk of it, and then I just finished it off. So I would highly recommend that if you're going to do pouring, that you trace it, so you don't lose your drawing.
What's the name of it?
It's Starving Artist, Cheap Joe. Cheap Joe has it. Not expensive.
Now, have you already masked that, parts of it?
Okay, so this one? Yes. I didn't want to take the time here to do this first mask and then have to let it dry and all. So can you see?
Yes.
I didn't do much. So on this one, I decided, so on the value study, the lightest light is the rock, is the stone that they're sitting on. I decided to try to, I poured that and I threw some salt on it. But it was very inconsistent. I think part of it was wetter than other parts of it. So the salt did some things here, but then it did a whole other thing where it was wetter and all this. I'm not really sure that I like this, although I can pour over that and kind of sort of neutralize that some more. But what I didn't do here is I felt like this is the sweet part of this composition. Now, I don't know how much you know about composition, but there's like the rule of thirds, which that you divide your paper in thirds, and the best places to put your center of interest are where the lines meet, and they meet about here, 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 and here. And I like that there was stuff going on here. There's a turtle sitting on top of a turtle in this view. And I thought, well, this is really maybe my center of interest, that maybe the darkest darks against the lightest lights. But I sort of covered that up in this. So I realized that I wanted to do it over. And so in this one, I masked the top of that shell in the small turtle. So this is going to be, it may not remain white, by the time I finish the painting, but I'm saving it as a white so then I can see what I need to do to at least keep some of it white. And then I'll put probably the darkest darks around that. So that's one of the reasons I wanted to do it over, because I lost that. The other thing is, this was getting kind of murky. I mean, it's good because turtles, like murky, probably. They live in murkiness. But I'm not sure what I did, but somehow this was not coming out as colorful as I would have liked. So I decided to try just some different colors. This I used one of the things that I've learned to do is to write down my colors, because if I ever go back to it and I don't have the colors, it can be a problem. So I always, usually on the back I do it, but I didn't do it on this one. But I have it written down on here. Okay. So the number 1, which is this one, was Quin Gold, Quin Red, and Prussian. I don't usually use Prussian, and I'm thinking that maybe it was the Prussian that kind of dulled it down. I'm not sure. So I changed the colors. In this pour that I'm going to do now, I've changed the colors. This board's here. And the colors I'm using today, Quin Gold, Permanent Alizarin Crimson. You know, they have this permanent kind now because alizarin crimson isn't light fast. It can fade. And so they have the new one is a permanent version of it. And Indian Throne Blue. So I don't think I'm going to tape this. I'm going to try to be careful about where the water goes on the back. Oh, just a couple paintings I wanted to show you also. This is boats, value study of boats. And I did this one first, and then I was doing a demo and I decided to do it in a different way. So this was the second one. These aren't finished, I need to put more detail in, but I kind of like how they're coming along.
Brushes that you use to put the masking fluid on?
Yes, cheap ones. These Liquitex ones I use, but it doesn't have to be Liquitex. It's just they're inexpensive. So I have bigger ones at home because if you're doing a sky, you know, you want to just be able to do it quickly. So I have big ones and they work beautifully, but you have to keep washing them out. So what I do is, this is just Dawn soap. In my water that I'll rinse out my brush in, I add just a drop or two of Dawn to it. And then what I also do is I take this Hotel Bar soap and I just go like this with the wet brush just to get a little more soap in it. But not much. If you put too much, it breaks, the mask won't hold. And then I rinse it in there. But you have to do it, like this is already, there's a lot of stickiness in it. I've used this brush a lot. So you have to keep rinsing it out.
Cheap Joe's has a line of brushes just for
Ugly brushes? The ugly brushes?
ugly brushes.
Yeah.
I never used them.
I bought them and I love them. I love them so much I don't want to use them for the masking fluid because they're really nice. They keep their point. You know, every once in a while I might use one, but I try not to because I think they're pretty good brushes as they are. They're really inexpensive. Okay.
What did you mask on that already?
Yes.
You already did that?
Yes. Several things I masked. Besides the back, I have to hold it. Besides the back of this turtle, I used something and I masked in these turtles. You see these lines? They're very attractive. I love these lines here. So and here too. But I didn't do these, but I did mask some of the lines on the turtles' heads. Now this turtle's head I turned because they were looking kind of off the page, and I wanted, this to remain on the page, so I turned the neck so it's going the other way, and I just made up some lines on that one. And I did a few there. On the other turtle painting, actually, I don't know if you can see the mask on this. There's a lot of mask on this one. Yes. I did mask. There's an intricate, there's a lot of intricate lines in here. See that? So I did mask them. I have to do another pour on this. But I like all that delicate detail there. So
Do you start with the lightest colors and then add the darker colors?
okay, all right. So the next step is the drawing. The next step is masking out your lightest lights so that when you pour, it's you're saving those. And not that they're going to be white at the end, but at least it gives you an option what they're going to be by saving them. So, I'll tell you how to mix in a minute, but just the process of pouring is you get your 3 colors, and then you just pour the first layer. So the first layer is going to go over everything that you haven't masked. So, because the water is dark, because the stone is light, but I don't want it to be white. This is part water. The turtles are all, darker, even though, when I squint at this, I know that there are these lights here, but they're not going to be white. So I'm going to just pour right over that. But I saved this shell, so it won't. And then what you do is you mask, if you want to mask. Sometimes you just want to pour another layer to get it darker. But suppose I poured, and so the stone is now the value that I want it to be. I might mask that whole stone. So I would mask the next lightest thing and then pour so that everything around it becomes darker. And then the next layer would be the next lightest thing. So you go from the lightest light and you keep covering up the next light.
And you don't take any of the original mask off.
You can.
Adding mask.
No, you can take it off. I think like in the cow painting. Some of the cows here. So I had masked the back of this originally, but then I took it off because I didn't want it to be really light. So another layer of color hit it. And then I may have masked over it being a light color so that I could do more of the dark around it. So it depends. You have a lot of options. It doesn't have to be complicated. Sometimes I think I make it much more complicated than it is.
You add color to that now, the way it is. Your lights are going to be another color.
Yes. So I'm not going to do it. This is the one I'm using those pipettes. It's an experiment. I've masked around the ears. I'm going to do the pipettes. I'm going to wet the paper, wet the ear, and then I'll do some colors with the pipettes. Put them in the same colors that's already in here.
Getting late on time.
Oh, well, let me get going. All right. Thank you. I appreciate that. All right. So I've already put some water in here. I would say there's about this much water in each of these yogurt cups. In Langen's book, the way he describes how to mix it is he says put enough paint so that the paint out of the tube, now this is not one of these tubes, to be more like one of these tubes, is the length of the bristles on a number 8 brush. So you kind of estimate, it probably maybe is a ½ an inch on a number 8 brush. But if you're using these big tubes, it's going to be less than a ½ an inch. And you don't want to waste paint as much as possible. I have 3 brushes that I mix with. I marked these 2, yellow and red and blue, and this is my yellow. So I don't have to mix and keep rinsing the brushes off. This is Queen Gold. What? I'm going to add just a little more. Some of it's not coming out. Very liquidy. Okay. And you really have to mix it up well because if you don't, you can get globs of paint that pour out onto your paper. This is the alizarin. That's the Chipmunks, isn't it? Alvin and the Chipmunks?
I would like to turn down their volume.
It's not as bad as it was though. It was really loud. Oh. Okay.
You always stay with the red, yellow, and gold collection.
I do. I know somebody, one of the students who's taken the class a few times with me, at Pine Shores, in fact, Art Association in Manahawkin. She did like a black and white pour of her son's dogs, and it really came out beautiful. I never tried like a monochrome or even a two-color pour, but I bet it would be very, very nice. Okay. Next step. Let me just pull this. Okay. Next step is wetting the paper. Just move this down. So you really want to wet the whole thing so that the paint really flows. And it will, of course, dry a lot lighter. I mean, already it's going to dry, what, 10 or 15% lighter. And then, but when you put it onto wet paper, it's going to dry even lighter than that.
And you're under a hot lamp there too.
Yes. Not too hot. I'd be sweating more, I think. Oh, it's one of those compact fluorescents. That one too, it's just a different color. Make sure you get under any clips. Okay, and now, finally, the moment you've all been waiting for. Just want to make sure I got the edges. What happens is if you don't get the edges, the paint will stop running right there where there's dry paper. Okay. I usually start with the yellow because the yellow can easily be overwhelmed, and if you put the blue and red on first, you may not be left with any yellow. And I usually pour at a diagonal. So I'm not really right now.
Something in mind when you're pouring?
I was just going to say I'm not really thinking too much about where things are going. At some point, I'll be thinking a lot about that. But right now, I just want to get some color on here. Maybe put a little more yellow over here. And you can manipulate it in different ways. You can use a brush to kind of move the paint around. Put a little more yellow here. And then some blue. Now, I know this is water down here, so eventually I want it to be dark, so I want to make sure I put blue over there. So these are pretty intense colors. I think I put more paint than the...
Now, do you pour everything, or do you at some point start to actually paint?
It's up to you. Sometimes I paint. It depends on what's going on. You know, this has to dry before I know actually what it's done. So I won't make that decision until this is dry. Now this seems to me a little intense. I might spray this. and make sure it hits all these areas. If it goes like this, you want to spray or move it with a brush so it covers the edges. I think the yellow is intense. It's Quin Gold, which is a staining color. So I wanted more intensity, and I sure got it. So these are a little darker than I usually pour, but that's all right. I just add a little more right up here. Just for some variation. And then I might put a little yellow. I'm going to add a little more water to that yellow. Part of the turtles are going to be warm, so I'm going to make sure I have a little warm there, and then I can cover it with cool later on. All right. So really what I'm looking for now is just a nice mix, something that I think will look
Is that the
nice.
size that you usually use? Do you ever do anything bigger than that?
No, but I want to. I think I have to wait till summer when I can go outside because it's really pretty messy in the house. Yeah, no, I'm hoping to. Okay, I think I'm just going to let this be for now. So, next step is to make sure I get as much as possible all of this wet water or paint on here off of the paper. And this is also something you have to remember to do is kind of under the clips. Make sure that the paint is gone all the way to the edge.
Why can't you get paint on the back of the paper?
Because it will come through, the moisture in it will come through and it can create blossoms. It may not be a bad thing, depending on what your subject matter is. But I don't want it to do that right now. It starts coming out from the edge. Let's see if I had one. I think this one. You see this right here? That's what happens. Can you see that?
Yes.
Yeah. You know, and so this is water, and it's not the worst thing. Over here, too, I really didn't carefully wipe that off. So that's what happens. It starts coming through. And, sometimes you can get rid of that, you know, by lifting it. But. So what I usually do at this point is put this on a flat surface, horizontal, and I might try to stretch it a little. I usually stretch the paper before I work. Once in a while, I might. But it can start to buckle, and so I want to, as much as possible, just pull it. So then I would put this on my desk or on a table, just to keep it flat. So this might take, I don't know, maybe half an hour, maybe longer to dry, depending on how much water I put in before I even pour the paint onto it.
Could you use a hair dryer to dry it?
Well, that's a good question. I have, and if I'm teaching a workshop, I probably would. But I think, and I took a Robert, you know Robert O'Brien? Okay, he's from Vermont. Very, very nice painter, work artist. He really, I took a workshop recently with him, and he really feels like when you dry it with a hair dryer, it changes not only the look of it, but also the paper. It affects the paper. When he uses a hair dryer, he uses it on low and he uses cool. You know, so it's just the air and not the warmth. But I generally don't like to use a hair dryer.
Would it also affect the masking?
It can affect the masking, yes, if it's too hot and you do it too close, yes. And I think it also, maybe the other thing is that it can create like buckles because some of it is drying faster than other parts of it. So I think there can be some buckling involved in that too. Anybody else have any other ideas about hair dryers? Okay, how are we doing time-wise, Jen?
We have about 10 minutes left.
10 minutes left, okay. So,
So the next step is you're gonna put masking on for the next lightest layer?
yes, good question. Let me just get mine. So, oh, not here. All right, so what would my next step be? So I know that the water is going to be dark. So I may never mask the water anymore because I want each layer to go on top of that. At the very end, you see there are there's some vegetation that's reflected.
Yes.
Can you see that? In the back, which I find it attractive. And I could see maybe doing some negative painting back there, but that would be with a brush at the end, or even some direct painting, just to put those reflections in. But I just leave that to the very end. So I think my next step, according to my value study, this head is light, and I didn't mask that head. That's this head. I might mask the head there, and I might, what I might do is I might mask, you see here how, I didn't put it in here because that's not a detailed study. You see how these lines, the light is reflected in some of these divisions here? So that's what I might do. I might take the mask and maybe not all of them. Around this edge, there's this light, and then I might mask this detail in here. Now that area is already this color, but I don't know what it's going to look like when it's really dry. But it might be enough where I want to mask out that beautiful design line work in there, so that when I pour again, that will stay lighter.
So the first pour that you did,
You just put in yellow and blue and red until it made a nice design.
Yes.
What are you doing with each subsequent layer in terms of red and yellow and blue?
I'm using all the colors.
Yeah.
And when I get to the very end, like in this water, I know my blue is my darkest color. If I really want this water to be dark, I might tend to load up more on the blue. Throw some yellow in it to get a green, maybe. I'm not sure, it's gonna depend on what it looks like. So I might pour more blue. If I wanted, like this area of this turtle, it's fairly light, but it's warm. So I might focus, if I'm gonna pour over that some more, I might focus on maybe a little yellow and red in that area, but not to be exact in it, but more just to kind of make a sense that that's a warmer area than the rest of the shell.
You would be pouring rather than brushing.
Yes, at this point, I'm still pouring. Now, at some point, maybe after the next pour or 2 pours from now, I may decide, okay, that's enough pouring. Let me get to some brushwork. I want to do some negative painting here and there. So, but I won't know that until I see what it looks like.
While this is still wet, could you take a brush and lift some of the color?
You could do that. You could do that. Especially if you know that you want something to be light, you know, maybe with a little color. Yes, definitely you could. Or while this is still wet, I could take one of those pipettes and
Yes.
now it might be too dry for that now. I think it might be. But when I first finished, I could have taken a pipette and dropped some more color in particular places. Not like inside a line, but just in that area to let it sort of absorb, you know.
Do you ever use eyedropper? Eyedropper.
No, I haven't.
That's too big.
I haven't, yeah. But you could. I mean, why not?
Eyedropper, you can get little eyedroppers at the drugstore that are about the same as those pipettes.
Or red berries. Or, this would be good.
Yeah.
Smaller ones would be better, yeah.
Yes, they come in, I have an assortment, the student that brought me those, there are different sizes, I don't know if I have them with me. But yeah, you might want to use thinner ones or thicker ones.
So are you going to block out the entire base then with masking, the white area that the turtles are on? Is that your next step?
I don't think it's my next step. It might be the step after. It might be after the next pour because I'm not ready, even though that rock is really light, it depends how this dries. I don't know how light it's going to dry, so I have to wait and see. If it's really, really light, I might do another pour on it, but maybe not an intense pour. I might spray some of it away.
How do you get a soft edge versus a hard edge
Yeah.
that you have for masking?
Yes, that's a good question. Well, depending on what kind of paint you're using, if it's not staining paint, you can lift. You know, you can take a stiff brush and sort of lift the edge. The masking would have to come off first, and then just try to mix it. Now, Linda Baker, what she does sometimes when she puts like in an area where she knows she doesn't want a hard edge, she might scumble the masking fluid, like put it on and then just roll it a little with her finger, and the masking fluid like breaks up a little so that there's not a hard edge there. But sometimes it can be very difficult to do that.
I've tried diluting the mask and doing that, but that also sticks sometimes, so I don't like to
Oh, yes. Yeah.
What are you diluting it with?
I have to dilute it in water. Ammonia? Just in a regular bottle.
Do you ever use masking tape when you're doing a subsequent one?
You know, I've tried, they sell these sheets of the,
Of a tack?
yes, and I tried that. I did it on one pour on the sky, but they were,
Too much of a line?
oh, actually, I never tried it. It was so expensive that I didn't want to use it. But I tried tape. I tried masking tape, and the pour went through where the tape met the edge, the next edge. So that didn't work for me. Now, maybe I could have covered that with masking fluid. I don't know. But, yeah. You know, I find that if it's a really large area, I just use a really big brush, and the mask will go on really quickly. You know,
Janet, I took a class with David Daniels,
I don't know.
and
Not
he
familiar.
uses tons of masking.
Oh, yeah?
And he said,
Liquid mask?
But he uses something called mold builder. And I bought it, comes in a quart container.
Oh.
And you can water it down, and you can use it on big areas.
Uh-huh.
You can't really get very, very fine lines, but on big areas, applying it with a brush, it works really well, and it
Oh,
always
okay.
comes off.
I think I may have heard of that, or something like that with another name.
Yeah. I don't remember the brand he recommended, but I did buy it, and I used it, and I bought it.
Yes.
One, either Jerry's or Cheap Joe's, one of them, but it's called Mold Builder.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
You know, one of the reasons also, I don't think I mentioned this, is I don't like to use the gray and the blue and the yellow because it affects how I'm seeing what's happening on the paper. Now, what, is that a color? That
White.
Oh, it's white?
It's
Oh,
white.
okay. Yeah, because if I had blue mask on here, it would be hard for me to like decide, well, what am I gonna do? How dark is the paint and how dark is that mask, you know, when I lift it, is it gonna be light underneath? I tend to just stick with the whites as much as possible.
You have to play around with it to get the water ratio mix the way you like to apply the stuff, but it
Yeah.
really does work well. And if you're gonna do like a large background, it really is good, because those little bottles, he said he used to go through 10 bottles on a painting, because he works really big.
Oh, yeah. You know, the other thing that I just wanted to mention is whatever kind of mask you have, if you find that it's getting really thick and not going on well, you can dilute it with whatever the base is. Somebody mentioned ammonia
And water, but,
and water. No.
because it gets gloppy, it gets clumpy.
Contains ammonia. So I would, if I wanted to try to thin this out more, I'd use ammonia. I'd use whatever was in there to begin with. They may all have different bases, I don't know.
And if you use 300-pound paper, do you have to use more paint? Like, why don't you use 300 pounds?
I hardly ever use, mostly because I'm cheap.
Also, it stays damp for a long time.
Yes.
When you use the heavier paper.
Yes. I imagine you would have to use more paint. I don't know, though. I'm not sure.
But it wouldn't bulk.
Right.
When
Yes.
you're covering up a large area like that whole stone with masking fluid, how do you get it off? Because I just did something that had a lot of mask on it, and I almost rubbed my arm off trying to get it off.
It can be, yes.
Pull it off in sheets.
This is just a giant piece of masking fluid that came off, you know, and it just kept building. So usually I would use the
Pick up.
rubber cement pickup.
That's good for making waves and things.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you
Oh, interesting.
put it in masking fluid and then just do this on the paper.
Oh,
And
that's
how you
interesting.
get your little foamy.
This is a rubber cement pickup I used to, but you know, it can take a lot of arm action to get this off. Now, I had a color pouring workshop a couple weeks ago, and one woman had had done her sky, and she pulled it off, and it all came off in one piece. She said she put it on really thick, so it might be a reason to put it on thick if it'll come off easily.
Pretty much.
Any other questions? I think we're almost.
Any other questions?
Yes,
Janet?
how long have you
Ann?
been painting, Janet?
I started painting in like the late 90s, and then I took Dick Oak's class in Newburgh, and I was with him about a year and a half. That was around 1999 or 2000, I think. And then from there, Mel Staben has been a mentor for me. You know, he's up in our area more. He's about like 45 minutes where he would teach. He doesn't teach classes anymore.
Where was that?
That was in Ridgewood. He used to teach in Ridgewood.
That's where I met you,
Oh,
at Mel's class.
oh, interesting. Yes, yes.
And then he
Okay.
stopped teaching there.
He stopped. Well, you know what? I think that he wasn't getting enough students and it wasn't worth it anymore, or they weren't
I
regular.
think they changed the parking arrangement for the church. They made it kind of difficult for them.
Yeah. He's coming. Oh, I don't know if any of you are a member of News, Northeast Watercolor Society. There's a brochure on News if you want one. But he's going to be the Northeast Watercolor Society workshop teacher and judge for the next international show. So the workshop will be in October, and then he'll judge that show in Connecticut. So if you're interested in joining or want to know anything about it, there's a brochure.
Any more questions for Janet?
Can we applaud?
Can we?
Thank you. I couldn't see you very well, but you were a great audience.
And it's finally quiet.
Yes. Right.